What's going on, everybody? Episode 78 of the Patio Slave podcast coming at you right now. It's Anthony, your co-host with Nate and Tony. Nate and Tony, what's going on, folks?
Yo, what's up, man?
Yo. Back on the West Coast, but missing you guys dearly.
Yeah, so Nate, you were on the East Coast last week. We did not record. We dropped Phil from Taproot round 2, but we saw you. We chatted, right?
Yeah, it was awesome. I basically had a Phil reminiscent story of kind of a equipment malfunction or lost in transit type situation. So yeah, no, that was awesome, man. Hanging out with you guys, nerding out, watching you guys try to figure out a way to record with different scenarios, different variations of microphones. An old one from the 1970s that I dug up from my camp, one that I bought on the spot. But going to the show with you guys was probably the best part because that was the epitome of nerdery. It was actually going to a gig.
Yeah, we had a blast that show too. That was a lot of fun. It was one of the warmer days in recent memory in Maine, and we've had some warm days this year, but it was really hot. But fortunately, outside on the water, nice little breeze, 311 in the ear holes. We were having a good time out there, and we get to run into some other friends we hadn't seen in a while. And episode 17 guests. I think if you follow us on socials, you saw the picture of all of us in front of the stage, out a ways. But yeah, that was a blast, man. I'm glad to have been at a live show with you guys because it's always fun doing that.
And that's one thing in the Northeast, you don't get the opportunity to go to many outdoor shows. And I don't know. I have a log of how many shows I've been to, like 500. Not many of them are outside. The large majority are inside. So outside in the Maine summer is next level. I'm sure if you're from warm weather, you're like, yeah, whatever. But no, it's awesome. If you're on the water, which is where we were, great show. And, I just remember like turning to you guys for some of the deep cuts that I didn't expect, like Misdirected Hostility from self-titled album by 311. I was like, damn, I never thought I'd hear this live.
Sick Tight too. Sick Tight was awesome.
Oh yeah. From Chaos.
I can actually vouch for what you're saying too on the outside show. Obviously living here in San Diego now, obviously pretty ideal weather for the most part year round, but being in Maine for an outdoor show kind of tail end of summer, and the humidity had just died off, like literally like that day or the day before. So it was like kind of like a perfect show, perfect weather. First time at that venue, and interesting for me to see, because I know you guys have been to that venue.
No, just me.
Never been.
Never been either. Yeah,
that was a real treat for me.
Oh, okay. One thing I couldn't help geek out on with both you guys and our guest Rob was knowing that that's essentially stage one for that venue, that they're eventually going to probably build that out with seats, and it's going to kind of go through this crescendo of a full-on build-out where they'll probably like a VIP section, kind of like what we used to see at what is called Meadowbrook in Guilford, New Hampshire. They went through those same stages back in 2001. It was just an open field with an open stage that they would take down and put together. Thompson's Point, they build that stage for every show, but I think at some point that will be a permanent stage with all sorts of different luxuries at some point.
I think you're right. I think that could definitely be something we'll see there. They've been doing shows there now back again for probably the better part of a decade, 7 years, 2014, I think was the year we go back and listen to episode 52. That question is answered. We talked to Lauren Wayne, who books it. Yep. She did answer that question, but it's pretty wild that it's turned into a pretty awesome summer destination for tours, and to have them back this summer, be outside, be at a venue that I've been to a handful of times, but you guys had never been to, but it's just a great spot for a concert. Like the sun goes down over the water to the left of the stage. And again, go check our Twitter at Patio Slave, and you'll see the picture that is our header is the sunset at a show at Thompson's Point. So it's a pretty magical spot if the night is right.
Yeah, I was going to say that build out would cement their presence for long term, but I don't think they're going anywhere anyway. So, but yeah, kick-ass show. Good to see you, Nate. Hopefully you're back. You didn't take your nerdery with you, so I still got your nerdery in the basement, which I'm happy about. True. I look at that stuff every now and then. Nate's grab bag.
It makes its way into our social media from time to time.
Yeah. Plus, I'm paying rent, right? You guys get to take some free stuff every once in a while if you want.
Every month, get something.
We've already done that. Yeah, there's less in there now.
Yeah. No, that was a good time. Like it is definitely a collective of guests between Lauren Wayne and Robert Catelli, and obviously us, all being at that show.
Oh,
together.
and Peanut.
That's
And
right.
Peanut,
Don't
Holy
forget
shit.
Peanut.
3 guests.
Yeah.
And maybe
Yeah.
Seth. I don't know. Seth from Trawl. He might have been there.
Seth might have been there. Yeah, I don't know. We never could hook up with them if they were there. So Seth, if you're listening, were you there? Hit us up in the DMs.
Yeah.
It goes down in the DM.
No, that was a blast, and I look forward to doing it again probably next summer around the same time when you're back again, Nate, because it seems to be an annual pilgrimage for you.
Yeah, summer, not gonna lie. I moved because I wasn't a big fan of the winter. So for me, investment wise, I gotta come back in the summer. That's when the shows are, it's when the weather is amazing. It's when Maine really shines. I'll probably come back in the winter at some point. Not gonna lie. Things are changing in my life that are conducive to coming home for Christmas and stuff like that. But yeah, Maine. In fact, I got to say this because I think we've talked about it on here, and I definitely talked about it with my wife, which is I usually plan trips around shows. This one actually happened to work out around that 311 show. That wasn't planned,
Beautiful.
but it did. Yeah, it worked out great. So
It's a good time of year to be in Maine. Late August, early September. Right? I'm wearing a sweatshirt. It's September 2nd that we're recording Inside Baseball, but I'm wearing a sweatshirt because I think it was like when the sun went down, it was like 60 degrees out here. I'm like, damn, the summer's over. Shit, what happened?
All right, so that was last week. This is this week, and we got some cool stuff planned for this episode, right? We got a little new music roundup. We haven't done that in a while. It was a pretty big release. The last couple weeks, some big releases came out, and we're going to hit on a few of them. Where do we want to start?
So when you're hearing this, a lot of these releases came out about a week ago. The ones that we're going to hit on the most. We've talked about Turnstile a few times because we brought up Turnstile during our best of 2021 so far. Just the EP there that they put out, which was kind of a teaser for the album. The album dropped, right? So it's now. If you're hearing this, it's early September. The album's been out for about a week plus, and I mean, damn, it did not disappoint, right?
Oh, it's awesome. And I know we heard that what was like an EP that had a few teaser songs, and it had like that whole, and I'm going to keep quoting this, like the Reading Rainbow vibes. I didn't realize that was going to kind of transcend throughout the whole album, which is kind of cool. So it's basically like there's a sequence in and out of all the songs, which I thought was really cool. Speaking of 311, Nick Hexum actually gave them a big prop post, or maybe it was just a story on the album and the band a few weeks ago, or maybe I think it was the week that I was in Maine. So not to tie it back to 311, but everyone's listening. And yeah, man, I'm a fan. I listen to it pretty heavily because it's such an easy album to listen to. It's like a sing-along album. Speaking of live shows, I feel like that would actually be a very good album in its entirety translated to a live show, which I rarely say because you obviously want to hear more than just one album. But the way it flows together as a collective unit would be kind of neat to see that in show.
Check Twitter, check YouTube. There's clips from their recent few shows, and it's pretty wild. Like, great stage presence. They've always been known for the live show, and I think these songs, from what I heard, translate very well. Yeah, I love this record. It's a great record. I think the production is next level, and it's super polished. And for a band like them, it can go one of two ways. It can be like, all right, this is a polished turd, or it can enhance the experience. And I think that's what it does. I don't think it takes away from the essence of them as a band. I think it enhances them. I think a lot of people were like surprised by this record, or like I saw some chatter online like this is the sellout record or whatever. It's like, fuck that. They've been on Roadrunner for a couple albums now. If you look at the trajectory, like, this makes sense. Like, go back and listen to Time and Space. Go back to listen to Nonstop Feeling, where they kind of channeled 311, tying it back to 311 again. It makes sense. Like, even on Time and Space, there's that quirky interlude called Bomb, which would fit right on the money with Glow On. And like, they've been that band from the hardcore scene for years. Like, Pitchfork has always loved them. They were on Coachella 3 years ago. Like, this is, I don't see any other direction but this album for them. And I'm like, I don't know them, but I'm fucking stoked for them because I think this is a good thing.
I mean, you knew them before this, right, Twan?
Yep.
Yeah, see, I did not know them very well. I've heard the name. Maybe I'd heard a song. Maybe, you'd mentioned them. Who knows? There have been some kind of touch points for me, but it's never been something that I've sought out. And then the EP drops, and I listened to a couple songs because a bunch of people have been talking about it, got some buzz, and now I'm a full-fledged fanboy. Like, it brought in people like me who like hardcore in certain instances, but this is like what the production aspect is. It's definitely a choice, and I think it works really well for them, just like you said. And it's because of things like bringing somebody like me in, maybe even you, Nate, where there are totally aspects of the hardcore scene here, but it's so accessible. It's so, it's glossy, it's polished, it sounds really nice, and then you get something like that Reading Rainbow effect that you said, Nate, and to kind of give you to the into the next song, and the next song will kick your ass, like especially live. I'm sure like there's some breakdowns that like I want to see TLC live so bad because I want to just see everybody jumping off the stage. I've seen videos on Twitter. I want to be at that. I want that to be part of my life, and whenever they come around, I'm going to try to see it because of it. So yeah, I think this is a great play for them, just because it was a next step to get more people on board, and I don't think they lose who they are because of it. Because I've gone back and listened to some of the older stuff since, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, I can see how they got here, and I'm glad they did because it brought me in.
I love your assessment. I just started thinking about it in my head just now, and it reminds me of the band Kings of Leon when they came out with Only by the Night. That was like 4 albums in, I say maybe 3. I think it was 4, but their albums before it are super grassroots Tennessee rock and roll, whereas Only by the Night also is, but it has that kind of mainstream-esque point to it where it brought in people like me. I didn't know about the band beforehand and became a giant fan ever since. But it's like, it's not really a sellout move. It's really just where they are in their career. And if it's label pressure or whatever it is, it's not even a sellout move. It's like, well, it's their career. So it's like, if you don't want to move more units, like, well, shit, like that's what they do for a living. Secondly, like, I feel like once you've already kind of paid your dues up until that point, like it's natural progression. I think you said that, Twan, like, it's not like selling out. It's really just like, this is where we are. This is the music we're making. This is the age that we're at currently. And we're going to make music that we feel good about. And if it happens to transcend to new people like you and I, Tone, even better. So it's really, it'd be different if it was like a Coldplay Shotgun Blast, like this is our overproduced album, buy it. It's on Target ads everywhere. Like that's a different kind of realm of in your face. But this is like, we've already paid our dues. This is where we're at today. If you like it, awesome. If you don't, that's fine too. So I think this is a perfect album, and timing wise, like it's not like they've been working this hard for nothing.
Yeah. And the parallel that I have in my head is, I don't know if you guys know this band, but there was a band on Bridge 9 in the mid 2000s. They were called Ceremony, and each album was kind of a shift slowly away from really aggressive hardcore punk. Like the singer was fucking a madman. I saw him a bunch of times back in the day, Henry Rollins Jr. And then in the early 2010s, they moved to Matador Records, that's like who Julian Baker's on now. And they put out this like really indie shoegazy album, and it was like totally unexpected. And a lot of people that I saw online are comparing what Turnstile did to that, and it's just not, I don't think it's that big of a leap, and I just keep going back on that. It's like you saw it with Title Fight when they put out Hyperview. It was like kind of a shoegazy hum worship album, which I can see that was a big leap, but Turnstile I don't see as a big leap.
I'm kind of surprised that I mentioned this in text, but I didn't really give it its due to explain it. That there aren't more hardcore bands or bands of this ilk, not necessarily even hardcore, maybe punk, maybe adjacent, that haven't tried something like this. I feel like they're doing it the best, so maybe that's why maybe there are bands that are doing it, but that's why I haven't noticed it. But I think like there's some elements of like Duran Duran and like 80s synth pop on here that like just
totally.
Yeah.
What other hardcore band is going to pull that off, or what other hardcore punk band or punk band in general is pulling that off? Not many. So maybe that's a testament to them, that they're just doing it well. But I haven't noticed a lot of it. And Twan, you'd be better off explaining that than me. But I don't think a lot of bands do this because maybe it would piss some people, some hardcore enthusiasts that are just like, stay in your lane, I want to do that, off. But fuck, man, like why not bend the genre a little bit and do something a little different?
Yeah. No, if you read the blogs and you read Reddit and Twitter and all that shit, no, there's a lot of people like that. And I think it's a timeless record, and I think that gets back to the way it was produced. I'm trying to think if anyone's done it like that. I mean, in the mid 90s, Roadrunner had a thing with like Shelter, and I don't know if Civ was on Roadrunner or if they were on I know they were on Revelation, but they kind of straddled that line of like hardcore roots, but trying to branch out there a little bit. I feel like this is the most seamless. And even when you add in that synth, the synth pop or whatever you want to call it, it still works. But cool record. Cool fucking record.
Very cool record. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. There's another one. There's one that we've talked about in the past, too. The Halsey with 9 Inch Nails backing her record. If I Can't Have Love, I Want Power, I believe is the name of it.
Love the title. Love the title.
Yeah. And, I mean, I've been a fan of Halsey anyway, fairly recently over the last few years. Just, I find her interesting. I think she doesn't just fall into the pop star aesthetic. She like tries to change things a little bit and put out a little more thoughtful music than just here's some saccharine, deal with it. And this is obviously right up that alley. It's let's take a chance. Let's do something different. Let's collaborate with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross and make a darker, but still with some pop sensibility record. And fuck if she didn't knock it out of the park.
Oh, 100%. And for me, I'm a late bloomer on Halsey. So for me, anything associated with Trent Reznor is kind of like a stamp of approval, really. You know, it's like if she's worth collaborating with, it's obviously something worth checking out. So I know that is somewhat sellout for me to say, but at the same time, like, you know, I didn't know her, so it's an extra vouch. And, you know, actually our topic tonight is albums we've never heard. So it kind of goes along with that. Like, you know, this is out there. She's collaborating with a mastermind in the music industry. And his sound is definitely in the background, like straight up on the intro, right? That's like, is it Closer that comes to mind?
Yeah, there's a couple of those. There's a couple times when I listen to it, I'm like, oh man, I hear this. This sounds like a Nail song. But Halsey's singing over it, which is fucking badass.
Yeah, exactly. And the interesting thing is I heard it, but she is obviously so prominent in the songs that that's obviously her album that I almost forgot that he's even in the album or that he's in the background. Like he's so kind of molding around her art that I forgot that he was even involved and just realized like, oh, this is an amazing album. And then towards the end, I'm like, oh, actually, this is Trent in the back. This is really cool, which is saying something, right? Because it means that it's not a 9 Inch Nails record featuring Halsey. It's actually Halsey featuring Trent. So I think that's pretty rad.
Actually, there's a question I had for you guys because you guys are bigger Nails and Trent fans than me. I mean, obviously, I like him and love his stuff, but so question is, if you didn't know he was involved with this and you put this record on, could you pin it back to him? Like, obviously it's a darker sound for her from her past material, but could you pin it to Trent, you think, if you didn't know it?
I think yes.
That's a really good question because I got lost so many times forgetting that he's on the album that I want to say no. Actually, first instinct, I would say no. I would have to see it in the credits.
And my yes isn't because I think he dominates the record because he doesn't. She does. Yeah. And her, I completely agree with you, Nate. This is not a 9 Inch Nails fanboy saying, oh, cool, he brought in Halsey and put her together. No. She's been, I liked her stuff before. I like Manic that came out a couple of years ago has some really, really good songs on it. And that was her. So, and we talked about her last summer with the MGK record because she was on a song with MGK and we were like, damn, I would take a whole album of Halsey doing pop punk songs. And then when this dropped, I remember texting you guys saying, damn, I thought I wanted a pop punk record with Halsey as a front person, but no, I just want her over this piano from the first track. That is a fucking vibe. And it really, the whole record is like that. And it doesn't disappoint. So she is very multifaceted and can kind of fit in whatever, you know, chameleon type lane she needs to because she's talented.
You made a point that you feel like she took a risk with this album, and I totally agree. So I listened to this album, and it wasn't like a headphones on just listening to it. It was kind of in the background. So maybe I'd feel differently if I heard it again, but I didn't hear an obvious single. I don't even know, is there a single off this? Which is like, that's for an artist of her stature, that's fucking rare. Like there's typically a obvious single, and I didn't hear one.
Apple Music thinks that, you know, they star a couple of them.
Yep.
Bells in Santa Fe, The Tradition, the first two songs, The Tradition and Bells in Santa Fe, and then Lilith, and then I'm Not a Woman, I'm a God. I would imagine I'm Not a Woman, I'm a God, because the video for it would be the single, I say in quotation marks. That's a catchy as hell song, by the way, too. Like, that's like a highlight for me as far as Halsey songs go, period.
Wow, that just made me think now that maybe it's the death to the single. Like you just don't need one anymore because it's just not something that's really needed. Like terrestrial radio is essentially dying. So maybe you need a single for Sirius XM, but not even, right? You just play a deep cut.
You don't
So
need singles. You don't need release dates. Oh wait, I'm getting out ahead of myself.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It probably makes more sense for a bigger artist to have a single just because it'll get played on radio. But I'm not sure what on this gets played on a pop radio station because
Right.
it is definitely darker. It's definitely got some different, different than pop music. Like I said, saccharine vibes to it. It's way more PG-13R versus that stuff. So
yeah.
You know how I know she's kind of universally accepted?
how?
Instagram vinyl nerds, even people that collect Metallica records, that collect Turnstile records, like I've seen a ton of vinyl posts of this album from accounts that wouldn't collect a Pink record. I'm not comparing
Right.
Halsey to Pink, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Or a Taylor Swift record.
Right.
And she took a chance and went a little more folky with her stuff last summer, and we've talked about her and liked that stuff too. But you're right. Like they're not going out and grabbing that. They might be getting the CD because it's at the counter and it's signed. But inside joke for you conspiracy nerds. Go back and listen to I don't know episode 65 maybe. Ooh, I'm gonna check. I'm checking now. No,
I'll put money on. I'm gonna put money on it. No,
I'm wrong. 69. Yeah.
Damn. Just lost the bet.
Shit to yourself. But yeah, damn good record. I will probably listen to it again when we're done tonight. I've listened to it probably the most of these records that we've talked about today. And the next one that we're going to talk about is just too long to listen to in one sitting. So that's probably why.
One last comment on Halsey is not only did she take a chance with the music, but the album cover too. And I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm going to let you, the artwork, you as a listener, go check it out.
Yep. It's out there.
It's out there.
It's out there. Good call.
So we have one more that, as I hinted at, was almost 2 hours long with a couple of different versions of tracks on it. That's probably why. But Kanye, Donda dropped Saturday?
Yep.
Or overnight Friday last week?
Yeah, clocking in at an hour and 48 minutes. So I'm a big, as we've talked about on here before, I like value when it comes to buying albums, especially as a kid. So an hour and 48 minutes, I don't even know how that's possible to get away with that. But Kanye's got some power in the industry. He's officially a billionaire, so he can kind of do whatever the hell he wants, I guess.
But Nate, would it be value though? Because that's double album territory. You're paying $19.99 for this back in the day. So maybe it's not value.
I know if it's a double album, it's that thick jewel case that doesn't fit anywhere. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I have mixed thoughts, but at the same time, like I haven't really listened to Kanye in depth in quite a while. I want to say since 808s. No, Twisted Fantasy. I think is the last time I really paid attention to what he was doing, and kind of fell off a little bit. I don't know. I think I was confused on the album. There was a lot of tracks that it seemed to kind of. I mean, there's obviously a lot of repetitory, especially the first track, right? Donda, 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 Donda. I'm always trying to figure out Kanye West. So this is another confusing, throw me for a loop album by Kanye West. And like you said, I had a hard time getting through the whole album just based on the length, which is unlike me. But I've also been kind of distant on his music for the most part for the last 5 or 6 years. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
I want to talk about Kanye, but I don't want to get too in depth because I am going to tease that we may be doing a Kanye episode in the not too distant future with a guest that may or may not also be putting out a double album. Weird, I know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's some Kanye stuff that we're gonna leave on the bone just cause. But I'm with you, Nate. It's similar to his last couple of albums. There's some stuff on here that's really really good, and then there's some stuff on here that's like this needed a little more time in the oven, and then there's some stuff that I just don't need. And because it's an hour and 44, you're gonna get that, or whatever, an hour, whatever, 48. You're going to get that. And this is a Kanye thing. He puts out great music when he's focused on putting out great music. And I think he was here. I just think he thought everything was great and needs a check here and there to kind of rein him in and cut some stuff down and make it a little more of a concise album, because there is a classic Kanye album in here. It's just 12 songs and, maybe some rearranging of some of the arrangements, but there's some really good stuff in here. Like the song with The Weeknd's great. I think it's Hurricane.
Yep, Hurricane.
Off the Grid's great. I like Jail a lot. The
Yep.
first real song. Yeah, there's Moon's cool. Like there's some good stuff on here. It just needs to be a little shorter and less of a run-on sentence.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. When you have an album this long, like there's gonna be filler, and you get that with this album. The other thing that I just can't get away from is it's too feature rich. There's too many fucking features, and I don't know. I know a few of them. Like I remember hearing, obviously I know The Weeknd, Travis Scott, Lil Baby's on there, but there's others I didn't know. And to me, it feels more like a project. It's not an album. It's like Kanye West presents or something. You know what I mean? Like you remember Dre presents The Aftermath, and he had that Been There, Done That song. It's almost like that. It's almost like a label showcase. Like I feel like where for like I had to like while I was listening to it, I had to Google like track list with features to understand who was on it.
I did that too. I did the same thing.
Yeah, because it wasn't on Spotify. The features it wasn't, which was interesting.
It's not on Apple Music either.
Yeah, it's not cohesive. I think if you trim it down, this would be a much better experience, I think, for the listener. But full disclosure, I haven't even listened to the back half of it. I just couldn't get there.
Yeah.
I was going to say our attention spans have definitely shortened just like everyone else. One thing I got to say though, and I was completely surprised, especially like you just said, Twan, you couldn't even look it up on Spotify, which is where I listen to it, is the Hove. Jay-Z came back into the picture, which is always kind of nice knowing that they had a little falling out. So Jay-Z and Kanye West back together on this album is good to know that they're patching things up. And it's actually a pretty good track. I mean, anything with Jay-Z and Kanye on the same track is gold. I mean, I don't know.
Is it though?
You know, you're familiar.
I thought his verse was kind of weak.
I did too.
Yep.
But I mean, Watch the Throne 2 confirmed.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like the bigger story here.
That's
like,
the bigger story.
That
They're
verse was
again.
like cooked in an oven. It was, he was nowhere. They weren't near each other. He just sent the beat, and
that's true.
I don't know. It's like that Drake. The Kanye verse in that Drake album where Jay-Z's rapping about cake, cake, cake. He raps cake with cake or something. It's like,
oh yeah,
you're better than this, man.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I think it was really just a familiar voice. Like you said, all these features that you didn't know. It's like, oh, Jay-Z, I know this guy. I know.
Well, you perk up, right? You obviously will perk up when you hear Jay because you know it's Jay and it's Jay-Z. Like this means something.
Yeah. But to your point, maybe it was forced or a showcase with all these people. Like, you know, they're both billionaires at this point. They're just moving units. So, hey, do you want to do a feature on my album? We'll sell product. You know, that's really all that matters. So maybe that's where the art's getting a little lost is it's like, so about the money. I'm not trying to shit on Kanye. And like you said, we'll save some meat on the bone for that episode in the future. But it just seems like there's a little bit of disconnect on the art because it's so much about, and you just go to Kanye's Instagram or Twitter and, you know, like he's bragging about being a billionaire all the time. It's like, cool, man. Like no one really cares, you know?
I mean, he's a guy who has some demons, right? I mean, he's bipolar. There's some stuff going on there with him that is just outside of the world of music is why he is who he is, and it makes him musically really good at what he does when he wants to be focused on that. And it's one of those things that's just going to be difficult. I don't want to get too obviously in the weeds on what's going on with him mentally, but he's also coming off, you know, a divorce, so you're going to get long sprawling here are all my feelings because this is a therapy session for him, I would imagine.
So Kanye, I think there's a lot we can dig into, and we're certainly going to, as Tone teased. But one of the narratives around this album was this whole fucking game of musical chairs that him and Drake were playing with. Like, all right, when's your release date? You show me your release date, I'll show you mine. And it got us thinking: do release dates even fucking matter anymore? And what do you think, Nate? Like, do you think release dates matter in 2021?
I definitely do. And part of it is what we talked about, and I don't know the episode number, you might, Tone, is around COVID, especially because we had talks about, oh, why are you holding out this album because of COVID? Everyone's listening, streaming. It really doesn't matter. But it actually does in retrospect. Now that we're in September, COVID is, pandemic is still happening, but people are out, people are buying things. The energy is different. So us talking about these albums is different. We're more ecstatic about it. We're not trapped. Our personal lives are a lot better than they were back in March of 2020. So I guess that for some kind of context, like I think it matters timing wise. Also, dropping an album around Christmas opposed to, let's say, like March or something, or February, dead of winter, you're really not shopping as much. Whereas if you're buying an album, I don't know, November for December for Christmas, it's a gift. So there's different metrics on when you drop the album in terms of sales. And on top of that, what you just said with Drake and Kanye, which is competing release dates where it's like, oh, if this is going to drop, there's no way we'll get the number one spot. So we actually should push the release date based on that alone. So between like emotional timing and holidays, just like anything else that gets marketed through, holidays, like, oh, we're going to drop this on Halloween for this reason. I think it does matter. But interestingly enough, it doesn't matter at the same time, right? Because it's all, for the most part, digital. So you should just really release things at will if you have the opportunity to do so. So I'm a little double-sided on it, but ultimately I think it does matter because there's just so much that surrounds that release date based on really marketing efforts at the end of the day.
So for big artists,
yeah,
you think release dates are a good idea? I think for big artists, they are a good idea. I think for artists that are going to go out, like you said, and tour essentially and use the release date of the album into a time where they can maximize their profits on it, maximize their exposure on it, I think there's still a thing. For even a guy like Kanye, I mean, he hasn't had a release date in how long? When was the last time he put a record out that had a release date? Was it My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy? It might have been.
Well, I mean, they all had them, but it never happened.
True. I mean, I don't take him saying Donda drops on blah, 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 and that's what happens. You know what I mean? Like, I can't take that seriously. But when he was putting out a record that was, a little more traditional as far as release date goes, it's probably been 10 years, 11 years for him. And he's just, oh, it's going to come out tomorrow. And then, I mean, he did this with Life of Pablo, and I don't want to get too into the Kanye stuff, but like he just said, here it is, and then took it down and then put it back up with different songs or different mixes of it. And like, that's for a guy like him, who's as big as he is, he can do that and own a weekend. I'm kind of surprised he put it out last weekend when 2 weekend prior, not as much going on. There was some pretty good music that came out last weekend. We talked about it at the beginning of this episode. So yeah, for bigger artists, release dates matter. And especially when you're going up against somebody who also is going to control the narrative for a week or longer, depending on how good that record is and what else comes out around it. Drake being a massive name in the rap game and music in general, he drops a record, it's going to make waves on, the week after that. You don't want to be in the wake of that if you're a smaller band or smaller artists trying to, gain some traction, because people are just going to be listening to Drake or listening to Taylor Swift or whoever, right? So for those smaller artists, yeah, maybe you push off, and if you can find out when a release date is for somebody like Drake or Taylor Swift, you avoid it. But I think for your big artists, it matters for money reasons, but they can also just do whatever the hell they want. People are going to listen.
Yeah, this is why I think this podcast works, like hearing your perspective, because I was kind of all cylinders from the perspective, from a numbers perspective. I was going to say it doesn't matter, right? I don't think they matter. Like before streaming, when you had to put cash out the door to buy an album, if there's two big albums, you might just select one of them. Where in this day and age, there's enough, for a lot of people, there's enough bandwidth in the day where if both Kanye and Drake drop an album, I'll probably listen to them in a weekend, but I won't listen to them as much. And that's what I forgot about. Where now it's all about volume of streams. And that's the key. It's like, yeah, you definitely want to avoid the Drake weekend if you're a rapper or even pop music. So I'm backpedaling what I was kind of thinking through in my head. And then from an artist like ego perspective, to get the number one spot, 100% they matter. You're going to stay right away from, one of these big boys putting out an album. You want that number one spot. Now, what does the number one spot get you outside of the fact that you streamed, more of your songs were streamed. I don't know. It's more, it's like a resume builder, I guess. But for a smaller artist who's not competing with some of these big boys, it's less important, I think. Like the actual specific release date. I don't think that matters. But for the big boys, yeah, you probably want to stay away from a Drake release weekend, which honestly, I feel like that's what he did with this, where it was like, all right, I'm going to bait this release and then just drop it to avoid any risk of being beaten by Drake, which they're titans. I don't know how that would have gone.
Well, he did it with 50 Cent, remember? And he destroyed him.
Oh, yeah.
50 Cent.
Forgot about that.
Like pretty much ended 50's career. Like he has been irrelevant musically since then.
Yeah, and he went bankrupt, right? Allegedly.
Now he's an actor though, so like good on 50. We like 50. We're just saying, like Kanye was like, all right, yeah, I'll go toe to toe with you, and 50 was like, let's do it, and that was the end of 50 Cent.
Exactly. It's like a celebrity death match. Yeah, I think that it's interesting. I think the only reason this is such a unique question, release dates matter, is because for me personally, just thinking about through the pandemic, is the connotation around the release date. Let's take the pandemic out of the picture completely. If you drop an album around Halloween, it'll always have those memories around Halloween because you listened to the album at that time, and whether it's positive or negative, it'll be tied to that. So if it's negative, you might kind of shelve that album for that reason, even if it's a really good album. And I even did it during COVID. Like there's albums that dropped during COVID that I'm like, I should revisit that album. And I don't. And I think it's because it's, subliminally like, that was a really shitty time. Even though it's a really fucking great album. And it's unfortunate. So like I said, pandemic aside, even though I use it as another example, there's certain times in my life where albums drop that I think are really good albums, but I literally never visit them based around that. And I don't think it's on purpose. It's literally just the timing where it dropped. So, and not that, artists have any control over your personal life or what's going on, but ultimately, like if you drop an album around Christmas or some kind of like happy time, especially summer, I think all bands would prefer to release their albums in the summer just because that's when everyone's kind of doing stuff and everyone's in a good mood. But
311, it's no accident they put out their albums every year in the summer.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
You drop an album in June and bam, tour, summer tour. We're outside. Everybody's having a good time. It's just good vibes all around. Yep.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? If you, not you guys in general, but listeners out there, hit us up. Let us know what you guys think about this, because I wonder, like, I could be talked into both sides of this, depending on the band, depending on the type of music, depending on all of these things. Like, I think an indie label, a band that's smaller, that's like, yeah, this is when we can actually print the records and send the records in the mail to our fans that actually give a shit about buying physical media. Yeah, the release date matters. So you could talk me into all of it. But yeah, if you guys have thoughts, hit us up, PodioSlavePodcast@gmail.com or at PodioSlave on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, even in the DMs if you want.
Yeah, I mean, just you two, the unique perspective that I did not think of made this super fun. All right, boys, we are going to get into
a mini segment.
A mini segment, which is classic albums that we've never listened to or given the time of day. Right? That's the gist of it.
Yep.
Who's first?
Yeah. We're each going to do one, right? We're going to, because Twan and I, before we came on tonight, kind of talked a little bit about, we each had one that, we'll save for another time, which we'll explain at the end, but one each, right?
Yeah, one of many. I probably have a lot, actually, considering all the recommendations
that
I've had just on this podcast.
Well, not all of them are classics. They're just ones that we like. Classic albums are like albums that were maybe widely considered to be, big, commercially successful, critically acclaimed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'll lead off. We did a post about the Black Album, Metallica.
Yep. A
couple weeks back. I know the singles. I have never listened to that album.
Holy shit! Hot take. Wow. Yeah, that's insane.
Never. I mean, I know the singles, and I can say that about a lot of Metallica records. But like I know Enter Sandman. I know, it's. I know who Metallica is. They are obviously very, very, very well known as a band. We've talked about them numerous times on this podcast, fairly recently as well. But yeah, I know Enter Sandman, the Sabbath True, the Unforgiven, Wherever I May Roam. Like I know the songs
Nothing
that were
matters,
played
for sure.
everywhere. Yeah.
Yep.
But I've never listened to it front to back. And that's probably it's obviously a fault of mine, and I like Metallica less than you guys do probably, but I don't dislike the band. It's not like I'm anti-Metallica or what they stand for, but I mean Lars can be a dick, but it is what it is. But yeah, never listened to that record front to back, and I will now because we're talking about it, and I'll probably get shamed into it. But yeah, that's a classic album that just turned what 30 the other day.
Yeah.
We posted about it. 30 years old. I have only heard the singles. Sorry guys. Sorry world.
Well, when you said Lars is a douche, so I have to ask: is that part of the reason? Do you think? Because obviously we all grew up in the era of Lars Ulrich suing Napster, and so many of our age group were like, yeah, fuck Metallica, in a time where it was probably the time to get into Metallica as a, I don't know, 15, 16-year-old.
True.
Do you think that's part of it? Or
That's a great point. And honestly, he probably gets a bad rap. Like, he is seeing this world where his music is being ripped off from him and they're seeing no money for it, when people could be out buying the record at their record stores, CD stores, whatever, and people are like you and me are downloading, Enter Sandman for our football CD mix in 2000, and he's like, "Fuck, what the fuck? These kids are stealing money from me." I get it. I see that side of it from him, but he did get painted as kind of a dick, and that's how we ended up here. But yeah, that might have been part of it. It could have been, but I listened to him before that. I don't dislike the band. It's never been I don't like Metallica, so fuck that record. But that could be a little piece subliminally.
So I'm going to quick tangent here and bring it back home for us. Say we only released our podcast behind a paywall, but we knew there was a pocket of people that were getting their hands on it. Would we care? For free? Would we care?
I don't think so, but that's a hard question to ask because we're part of that generation, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I would want to know why they were doing it that way, and if they cared that much, why wouldn't they want to be part of the paywall ecosystem? But at the same time, this is a labor of love. Like, we've made $0 on this because we love doing it. So
we've made negative.
I'd probably be like, cool, more people. Yeah, we're in the hole. We're in the red a little bit, guys. So if you want to hit us up, I'll make the Patreon at some point. But we have go on Good Pods, right? Well, you could tip us on goodpods.hk at Good Pods, I think is the Twitter. But yeah, if you listen to podcasts through that, if you're listening to us on Good Pods, leave us a tip.
I was a late bloomer to this album, which I guess in the context of like my age, I wasn't, but it's interesting. I bought And Justice for All and the Black Album on tape in the mid 2000s. And I know that because Nate, when you lived in Portland, I was using my mom's minivan for years, for a few years, like in college when I was home.
Yep.
After the Ford Escort. This was a Dodge Caravan, and it had a tape player in it. And I would play In Justice for All and the Black Album. And those are the two albums that I really know. Like, for this segment, I could probably throw Master of Puppets on as like a classic that I've given some time, but not a true front to back listen. Like, I know songs, but yeah, I think this is great. I mean, it's often referred to as their like sellout album, whatever, but I mean, it's just great. I guess if you compared it to the first album, Enter Sandman's more of a poppy song, whatever, if that's your thought. I think it's a fantastic album. It's definitely worth a front to back listen. You've probably heard half the songs anyway. True. But I mean, damn, how did I get away with not ever listening to that record?
I know, still is the real thing, like up until this point. Yeah, for me, like, I mean, for full disclosure, I was part of that list that got banned on Napster. So I got kicked off Napster from Lars. So that sucked.
Wait a second. Explain yourself. You got kicked off of Napster? How do you get kicked off of Napster?
I got banned from
Shadow banned?
I guess. I got banned from Lars on Napster, or from Metallica's management.
Well, did Lars send you a cease and desist?
No, how it works is basically your membership to Napster essentially just froze. Like, you couldn't download anything anymore. So the trick was to download things misspelled, and you were able to kind of get away with it that way. So Metallica could be spelled with like numbers and stuff like that, but you couldn't actually search for the actual song correctly, which is really unique. But yeah, so that's why I asked you that question earlier, because I had to chip my shoulder about that too. But because I saw Metallica at Woodstock and again at Summer Sanitarium, seeing them live, I became a fan almost because I saw them live. So I collected all their albums. My brother actually bought me Kill 'Em All as my first album from Metallica.
Nice.
But had it not been to seeing them live, I probably would have been in your boat, subliminally, like you said, pissed at Lars, like, fuck these guys. But because I saw them live, I became a full-on fan and listened to this album and all their albums and become, huge fan of the band, still am today. And like you said, that Black Album, I guess you're right, Twan, is kind of considered their sellout album, but man, it's fucking bona fide, great front to back album. So the live transition for me is always why I become a fan. It's like, all right, press, whatever the connotation of the album is or whatever, or the band or the band members, seeing the band live is what kind of makes me go from casual to full-on fan. So that's why I was able to grasp them despite being literally banned from the peer-to-peer network back in 99.
That's amazing.
Sean Parker shows up at your house, rapping on your door.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, as we say, you get nerd homework.
I do.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the best part. Is this segment lends itself to nerd homework every time.
Every time.
Can I go next?
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm going to expose myself a little bit. And I think like in the grand scheme of music, it's not like a big exposure, but I think for you guys, you'll probably be surprised. I've heard 2 songs in my life by this band. And those 2 songs are Race for the Prize and Do You Realize?
Oh, wow.
Do you know the band?
Flaming Lips?
Yes, Flaming Lips. Yep.
So I'm going to put it to vote. Are we going to talk about Soft Bulletin or Yoshimi right now?
Oh man, Yoshimi. I hope.
Nate, you pick. What's your vote?
Yeah, Yoshimi as well.
Okay. So I've only heard Do You Realize? I've heard 2 songs by this band. It's a house band for you guys.
Yeah.
It's not that I never got it. Like, it wasn't even that. It was like, this band's cool. I just never took that step.
Mm-hmm.
I never took it. So like, sell them to me. Give me an elevator pitch. Sell Flame, and we'll probably do this as a segment at some point, but like,
Hamster Ball, bro. Hamster
sell
Ball.
Yoshimi battles the Pink Robots to me.
Fight Test, great song. Twan, remember the show 3 South on MTV2?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what? You've heard 2 songs off this record because their theme song was Fight Test by the Flaming Lips.
No way. I didn't.
Yes, sir.
How didn't I know?
There's a nerd tidbit for all you.
What the
all
fuck
you
is
people
3
out there.
South?
Yeah, 3 South was a short-lived animated series on MTV or MTV2 in the 2002 range, and we stumbled upon it jokingly as seniors in high school and thought it was stupid and funny, and it was both stupid and funny. And their theme song was "Fight Test" by Flaming Lips.
So I've heard 3 songs. And Fight Test was off Yoshimi or no?
Yep, first song on the record. Do you want me to give the pitch, Nate? I'll give the pitch. So.
Sure.
I liked this record before I saw them live, and like Nate says, seeing a great band live do their thing and like crush it makes you want to listen to more of them and find out more about them. This band, this is what happened to me. I liked some stuff. I'd heard Do You Realize? I'd heard Fight Test. I'd heard a couple other songs by them over the years, and then saw them live about 10 years ago with Nate and our episode 17 guest Rob down in Boston, and got to meet them, and they were really cool, which also helped. And they just put on a fucking amazing show. They opened the show with Wayne getting in a hamster ball and riding out on top of people and just like riding around the crowd in this hamster ball and like going from one spot and like standing up. And I mean, go to our YouTube page. There is a video of him over the top of me and my brother at the State Theater doing the hands up in the air, place going crazy, that's what they do live. So that helped certainly, but that record, In the Morning, The Magicians, Nate, that song's fucking awesome.
Yep.
Oh, Do You Realize it's great live? I mean, they drop confetti and balloons, and it's having seen them live obviously changes the perspective of the band. They put on such an epic show. Man, yeah. Go ahead, Nate. What do you got?
Yeah, selling point. It's a good way to kind of texturize the album because it is definitely something that you have to embrace, almost like a full-on deathcore metal album. Like you're gonna be going on a full-on trip. And when I first saw the album cover, I was already kind of perplexed by the artwork.
I could see that.
Right. I definitely didn't seek out this band on my own. It was introduced to me by people that were into that kind of trippy, like Ween and Flaming Lips and like that whole scene, which I wasn't into. So I was like, what is this? I don't get it. I'm not that kind of person. I don't trip on acid every day. Like, that's just not my thing. They did roll through Portland. I didn't make the show, but the album was handed to me in case I did make it to the gig as almost like a preparation. I was like, all right, I'll check it out. So I threw it on and listened to it front to back, which is, on a CD, you can do that, right? Kind of like a vinyl record. This is circa 2002, I think it was. So this album had just dropped. The show was at the State Theater, and I didn't make it to the show, unfortunately, at the time. But I really liked the album a lot, and it was really captured me at the moment, just because it was like a completely different genre, kind of like some of the music that you've brought to the table on this podcast, Anthony. Like, wow, I don't know this, but I think I like it. Like, I think this is something I can get into, and it's not even like a scene I ever thought I would fully understand, and definitely don't identify with it if I have to say it in a way of like I wear this kind of t-shirt and not that kind of t-shirt. But I loved it. I fell in love with the band as soon as I spun that record, and have been a fan ever since. Seeing them, like you said, Twan, definitely changed my fandom from like base level to like huge fan. And really because of Wayne, the singer, is a huge music fan, and the way he talks about music, I really like kind of leveled with him on, which is like music is this experience, it's this way of life, it's this appreciation, it's a way to really be happy about everything and every moment of every day, because life's beautiful and music is an expression of how fortunate we are to be alive. And I was like, oh man, I've always been very keen on expression, especially in a positive manner, and that was like something I really identified with at the time. And I was like, oh god damn, this is sweet. Even if I'm not tripping balls while I'm listening to this music, it was just something like, all right, this is cool. Like, it's a different way to express happiness and expression. So yeah, to sell it basically is it's a whole different element. It's a very psychedelic type, weird, super strange type trip that you're on. Basically, you feel like you're kind of on drugs listening to the music, to be completely transparent. But been a fan ever since. Great live show.
Great live show. Great
live show. But basically, it's a different realm. Like, you're like, okay, I'm going to listen to a death metal album, or am I going to listen to this full on psychedelic rock album? But it's beautiful music, and it's just not your normal rock and roll album. It's basically a concept album.
There's nobody like them.
Yeah.
There's nobody like them. A quick little tangent. We talked about that show. We saw him in Boston. I think it was the second time I had seen him. I think Nate probably second or third for you as well. We had bought Rob, our buddy, tickets for his birthday in July of, I don't know, 2011, I think. And we get to the show, and Rob had like pulled a couple strings and was like, oh man, like they hooked us up with better seats. So we sold the tickets we bought for Rob out front of the show. And then we're like talking to some people, and Rob's like, all right, they said to kind of go over to the right side of the stage. This is early before the opener had even gone on. I'm like, go hang out over there. And then we are hanging out there, and then the drummer of the band comes out and just says, hey, yeah, come on back, guys.
Nice.
We go out back. We hang out with the whole band. We're sitting in the dressing room that they're hanging out in, and Wayne's like, yeah, oh, you guys are from Portland? We're playing there in October. This is July, and we're like, you are? Like, it hadn't been announced yet.
Nice.
He broke news to us that they were playing the State Theater in October of that same year, and I was like, well, we'll fucking be there. So that was such a cool nerd moment that, like, the band broke news to us backstage at the show we were there to see them at, that they were playing our hometown 4 months later. It was pretty wild.
I was so bummed too, because I was moving that
Yeah,
fall.
you moved. Yeah.
It's like, fuck. Yeah.
Well, I got some homework, and I was going back and forth between Soft Bullets and Yoshimi, because I know Yoshimi was like the more quote unquote commercial success album, but if you look at their albums ranked by all critics, whatever, Soft Bulletin is the top one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
that's the one that put them on the map, right? That's why. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that album is basically like Queens of the Stone Age, Songs for the Deaf. Like, they had stuff before that, but that was like, and I think they dropped, same year, 2002. It was basically like their mainstream success, even though they're both not really mainstream albums at all.
True.
Songs for the Deaf and Yoshimi are not anything close to something you put on the radio, but they both made it.
And they've been a band for years and years.
Long time, yeah.
Since the 80s,
late 80s. Yep. Good pick, Twan. Good pick.
Yeah, legacy band. Yeah, you have some nerd homework as well.
I feel like that's a like late night when you're walking the dog, just like soaking in like
Yep.
I don't know, the trees and the sky and just like soaking it all
Yeah,
in.
try to like connect with nature a little bit
Yeah.
in one way or another. Whether you do it legally or not, that's up to you.
Right.
No, it's the best kind of music.
Well, I mean, look at the album cover. It's like something's
Yeah.
trippy going on there.
Yeah.
Oh, the artwork's so classic. Yeah, man, good call. I have to actually say one thing based on that show in Boston. Tone is that's actually what I was saying earlier with Thompson's Point. I feel like the Bank of America Pavilion. I don't know what it's called now. That's the stages that Thompson's Point's eventually going to get to because they get winter too, but that venue is stationary. The stage is built out. So
Yep. Big tent too, so it can rain. You can still have the show. Yep.
Yeah, so I think that's where it's going, which is exciting for Portland. It makes it a major market. But anyways, that's a little sidebar.
That's a callback to episode 78 earlier this episode, just if you were wondering.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, a little
All
nerd.
right, Nate, you're stalling. What's your classic album that you've never listened to?
Take us home.
All right.
Let's wrap this bad boy.
You guys are going to be surprised. It's Kid Rock Cocky. No, I'm just kidding.
I thought you were gonna say Saliva for a second, but
Kid Rock Cocky is the new Saliva. No, mine is surprising even for myself because I love this type of music. It's Massive Attack Mezzanine, I think that's how you say it.
Yep.
I know the one single and that's it. And every time I hear that single, I'm like, I'm gonna fucking play this album. And I actually almost saw them. I think it was like 2 months before the pandemic, like put everything in lockdown. They were playing this album front to back, like 4 shows in a row in San Diego. I'm like, I know that one song, and sometimes I do this. I know that one song. I'm going to see the show because that's their classic album, and it's probably going to get me into the band.
Yep.
Show got canceled because of COVID, and still haven't listened to it. And just that single, I'm like, I love this type of music. Why the fuck haven't I listened to this album? And it's it's ranked one of the best albums of all time, And it came out in the '90s. So it's a '90s OG, but for whatever reason, it's on that to-do list and just hasn't been spun. Have you guys checked this out?
I know the one song, and now I'm looking it up because I can tell you an anecdote about the one song, which you probably also know.
Yeah.
It was on a very popular TV show on Fox for quite some time as the theme song. What's the name of the song, Nate?
That's even worse. I know the single by hearing it, but I don't know by name.
Rising Sun.
I think that is it.
So the show was the show House.
Oh yeah.
Remember that show on Fox?
Yeah.
It was about Hugh Laurie. He was a doctor. He took on crazy cases. They used the song Teardrop, which is I think the song you're talking about, Nate, as their theme song for the majority of the show. A couple of different versions of it, but yeah, it was that song that I went and looked that up because of it, and I was like, oh, that's a banger of a song to like open a show.
Yeah,
and like and that happens to me a lot. Like I'll be watching TV with my wife, and a song will happen like in the background. I'm like, oh damn, that's an album or a artist that I should know. I'm checking it out. I find out what it is and like download it, listen to it. And this is one of the first iterations of that for me. Like I needed to know who this was and who they were and like why this was a banger and who picked that. Like it always makes me think like somebody decided to put that on the intro. Like they're a music fan. I want to meet that person. You know what I mean? Like they're people like us. So yeah, I only know that song though. So I'm with you. I don't know much else by them, but if there's more like that, it's probably worth peeping. You're right. It is a widely known record as probably their best record.
I know nothing about this band outside of the name, which I think everyone's probably heard of the name. I definitely seen the album cover. I would never have guessed Mezzanine was the album cover, but I just looked up the visual. I've definitely seen it, and I've probably seen it on like Rolling Stone top 500 albums, whatever list. I couldn't tell you what genre music. I mean, I can tell now because I just looked it up, but I couldn't have told you what genre music. Who, like, what world are they in? I almost feel like, are they in like a Blur or like who's in their realm? Portishead or something, bands like that.
Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
Yeah, this is homework. I know nothing about it. In fact, I'd have to look up Teardrop to see if I even know it.
I think
you'll know it. You'll know it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think it's been in multiple movies. And yeah, like you said, Tony, it just stands out and it kind of captures you. But for whatever reason, I just never listened to it. But I guess I'm not alone here. And timing always matters, right? It dropped on April 20th, 1998. So like we were young, we were kids. And it definitely wasn't like a mainstream band. Not that we were
listening to Limp Bizkit.
Yeah, the Biscuit. Yeah, Biscuit got more attention. But that scene, like you had to look for it, I think. Unless you were in Europe or something. Or it's considered trip hop or electronica. I definitely was not into that scene, especially then. Even now, like I, seek certain things out, but for the most part, it's something I have to actually dig into. This album in particular. So I'm happy that I'm not alone here because I'd feel ashamed.
Huge following. Like I looked it up, almost 3 million monthly Spotify listeners.
Yep. Still crushing it.
So that tells me they're probably still active.
That's a good question. I don't know enough about them.
Yeah, I mean they got to be because the show here that got canceled. It was 4 shows back to back playing this album front to back. I'm like, oh fuck, dude, I'm like the one that's going for the single.
Yeah. Yeah, but you probably would have ended up liking them and been like telling us all about them after the fact. So
Oh yeah, exactly.
there is something to be said for seeing a band live and being like converted by it. That definitely happens.
Yeah, it's the best way to be a bandwagon fan. It's like, all right, cool. I saw them live, so now I fully understand that. Or like I used to say on here, a live album. Like if you can't go to the show, you get a live album. You kind of get a greatest hits, and then also kind of a feel for what they're, I don't know, how they're acting or what they're trying to translate.
Nerd homework for all you folks out there. If you have never listened to one of these, listen to it. Hit us up. Let us know what you think. If there's a classic album that you have on your list that has just never made it for you to like give the time of day, I want to hear that too because like this is a repeatable segment for us. We will definitely do this again. We did it as a mini segment tonight because we had other stuff we wanted to get to from the last few weeks and didn't want to spoil too much of stuff from down the road. But yeah, hit us up. Let us know the classic albums that you haven't given the time of day, and we want to do this again. This will come up again for sure.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I feel like this might be a good spin the wheel type episode in the future.
Could be with another guest, maybe. Who knows?
Oh yeah, perhaps. Yeah, no, this has been real. Glad to be doing this again. Thanks for everyone that's listening. And like Tone said, hit us up. Cheers, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back. We got some cool stuff planned, some guests from all over the map. If you like what you've heard to date, you'll love what we got in store. So thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.
Peace, potheads.